The Minnesota Vikings named Kyler Murray their starting quarterback on Tuesday afternoon, and it wasn't that much of a surprise. We saw this coming from a mile away during the offseason when the Vikings said that they were going to add another quarterback to the mix. And then once they added Kyler Murray, it certainly felt that J.J. McCarthy's time in Minnesota was ticking down. Now, does that mean it's completely over? Only time will give us that answer, and it's possible that a trade could end up happening for McCarthy down the line. But what we don't know right now is where this leaves him. But let's start with Kyler Murray. Now, Murray ended up winning the starting job mainly due to what he was doing before he got to Minnesota. One of the tough parts about the starting quarterback coming in is that you already have opinions built up of that player, and scouting departments, coaches will have years and years of knowledge about a player coming in, where that he just had an inherent advantage over JJ McCarthy. Is that necessarily fair? No, but fair does not matter. What matters is wins and losses. And quite frankly, Murray gives the Vikings a better chance to win football games than JJ McCarthy does right now. And the number one reason why is processing. Yes, unfortunately, JJ McCarthy has not shown that he can process very well at all, which is really unfortunate for a multitude of reasons. But you don't expect a guy like McCarthy going into year 3 to process better than somebody in year 10. However, and Murray's not quite in year 10, but you get the picture. When you are McCarthy and you have an extra 2 years in the system, your processing, at least initially, should be relatively close because you already have a significantly stronger knowledge than Murray does. He wasn't processing nearly good enough at all. And the fact that he wasn't processing good enough made the decision significantly easier for the Minnesota Vikings. And it's just another prime example of what's going on in the realm of college football. Now, McCarthy had less than 700 passing attempts at the University of Michigan across 2 years as a starter. And he had some sparing playing time in his true freshman season. But when you're McCarthy, why did you have to come out as a 21-year-old junior? Was it simply that, hey, I think I'm going to be drafted high and I just won a national championship, so there's nothing else left for me to accomplish at the college level? That's a perfectly valid reason. But when you look back on it, you don't have to come out as a 21-year-old unless you know that you are the guy. And quite frankly, we just didn't have enough information on McCarthy. And when I broke him down as a college prospect, it was littered with questions. One of the biggest ones was he can't process information with any kind of consistency, and that is manifested at the NFL level. There were people criticizing McCarthy for just running a Jim Harbaugh offense, but they didn't trust him. And that was the crux of a lot of people's draft evaluations. Look, if he goes to a Kevin O'Connell system and then you develop him over the course of a few years, you could really get something. And the idea made sense. But McCarthy just was never able to piece it together for a multitude of reasons. One of those, the fact that he kept getting hurt. Another, there's just a chance that he's not very good. And that's not something that people want to admit. And it's not something that I want to have that conversation about because he's only 23 years old. But with the Minnesota Vikings right now, is not a fit. The Vikings have a win now kind of team, and they need a win now kind of quarterback. And unfortunately, McCarthy is not that guy. The idea was, oh, you have McCarthy on this rookie deal. You'll be able to maximize it because you have all this talent around him. It's a great fit. It didn't work out that way. So the real question is, why did he come out and where do we go from here? And this is just another cautionary tale for young quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson, Trey Lance, both had less passing attempts in college than J.J. McCarthy. Yes, Trey Lance did win an FCS national championship, but he certainly could have used another full year of college football. Trey Lance has less than 1,000 passing attempts since high school. So does Anthony Richardson. How is that doing either of them any favors for development? It's not. And we keep seeing young quarterbacks come out before they're ready. And with this new 5-for-5 rule that they have coming out in college football, McCarthy could be entering this NFL draft. He could have been selected in April because he would have been able to be in college for 5 years. And now you're talking about a guy with like 1,400, 1,500 passing attempts. and you have a much more complete evaluation of who JJ McCarthy is. Well, unfortunately, he didn't take that route. Neither did Richardson or Lance. And those players now are running out of options for development. They're sitting as second and third string players without being able to get on the field. There is no, as I wrote about for A to Z Sports in November of 2024, a minor league system that allows you to get reps. The practice squad isn't 40 players deep, so you can have games every single week during the regular season of the NFL. We don't have anything set up like that yet. Should we? Yeah. But it's another cautionary tale for players. They should stay in school. You don't have to come out. Stay. If you don't like the way your program is treating you, go to a different one. DJ Lagway just went from Florida to Baylor, and all reports are that he is a lot happier and he's performing well in camp. We'll see if that translates onto the field, but you have the options available to you to do those things. And McCarthy could have found himself in a good situation by continuing to develop and making himself a better professional before he ever got to the NFL ranks. But then there's the other factor here. Where does this go with McCarthy? Because quite frankly, we don't have the ability to send him back to college. Yeah, players are going back to school, but they haven't played in an NFL game yet with this new 5-for-5 rule. McCarthy doesn't have that luxury. So what happens here? Well, I kind of broke it down. And we all know Kevin O'Connell's quote about organizations failing young quarterbacks for young quarterbacks fail organizations, right? That's been a constant talking point. Well, this is all O'Connell's fault. It can't be the young kid. It has to be O'Connell's fault. No, they both share culpability. What percent? We don't know yet. But I want to read you the second part of the quote, which I think is incredibly important, especially for the young quarterback, JJ McCarthy. Now, these came in September of 2024 on the Rich Eisen show after JJ McCarthy's meniscus injury. Now, remember, Rich Eisen, Michigan man. So obviously he was going to be more willing and wanting to talk about McCarthy than other people. This is really important from O'Connell. Quote, I think it's important to understand that every single one of these guys is on a journey, a very difficult journey, that they need the support. They need the teammates around them. They need the systems in place to ultimately try to maximize who they are and what their potential is, because you're still drafting players rich off potential. And then everything happens from that moment to when that potential is really on the organization if you've got the right guy that you're bringing in. Now let's stop there. Stop there for just a second. If it's the right guy that you're bringing in, that in itself, O'Connell's telling you that if it's not the right guy, you can go through all the right processes and it doesn't matter. Maybe that's the case for JJ McCarthy. And the second part of this quote, after the organization's failure young quarterbacks aspect, is really important because he's talking about Sam Darnold here. Then in regards to, I do believe there's some times where things just don't work out and then getting a chance to kind of wipe the slate clean and get a restart while still using your previous experience to kind of shape how you're going to work, why you're going to work, why things are important to you will only make guys better in the end. And I've seen some examples of that in our league as well over the last few years. Now, you can reasonably conclude that Kevin O'Connell is talking about players like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, because they have been reclamation projects over the last few years. Plus, you also have Geno Smith, guys who did not succeed in the first stop or the second stop, but they found a way to get there. They found a way to be successful. And as unfortunate as it is, maybe McCarthy needs that. Maybe he needs a fresh start. Now, it feels kind of absurd being that he was given the Minnesota Vikings and you have a quote-unquote quarterback whisperer in the elite group of weapons. But sometimes it's an oil and water situation, and you don't always know that until they get into the building. And that can be on both parties, both the organization as a whole, coaching staff, players, et cetera, or it could be on the one player coming in. I can't tell you that it's one or the other. I can't tell you that neither are void of fault at all. But the reality is simple. If McCarthy would have stayed in college, we would have a better understanding of what he could be. But now that he's missed 25 of his first 35 games and he has shown that he can't process at an NFL level, We may never know that answer in Minnesota. And that stinks. At the end of the day, J.J. McCarthy was a cautionary tale to the young quarterbacks. Stay in school, get your reps, get more development, then come to the NFL. And I'm going to be very curious if the NFL starts viewing players in that light. I'm Tyler Forness of A to Z Sports. Skol Vikings.